There are many online sources showing how to make a deerskin rug, but so many of them leave out some important steps. So I decided to make a video showing how I created a deerskin rug using a combination of instructional videos and websites. This year I decided to take the deer to the butcher, but next year I'm planning to do it by myself because it's best to work with a fresh hide. There's less decomposition and less hair loss. Plus, when I skin the hide, I'm very careful not to make additional holes. Fleshing the hide and removing the fat and tissue is the most important part and also the most time consuming. To remove all this tissue, I used a paint scraper. I also used a dull knife or the backside of a sharp knife. I think I may have also used a spoon. So it requires a lot of different tools and a lot of force. My fingers are very sore afterward. After flushing the hide, it was very bloody, and so I did end up washing it with Dawn dish soap and water. However, basically all sources say to keep it dry before salting, so probably if I would do this again, I would have not washed it before salting. Next, I rubbed the hide down with non-iodized salt and tacked it onto a vertical board, allowing it to drain. The next morning, I dumped and scraped off the old salt and moisture and added a whole new layer of salt, rubbing it into the skin. You'll want to do this several times in order to dry out the skin almost entirely. You want it to be completely dry but still pliable. A really important step that I missed this time around and was unaware of is that if you do not split the tail, like I didn't split the tail down the middle, be sure you get all of the salt and moisture out of the tail. I had a problem with this and experienced some tail slippage. You really want to make sure you get it all out of there so that it can pickle correctly. Then I put the hide into an alum pickling solution for 4 days. You want to make sure the pH of this is below 2, so between 1.5 and 2, so make sure you have some pH strips. In the next few videos, you'll see how I stitched up the holes that were in the hide. So some of these holes were from the arrow, and others were from just when the deer was skinned, there were some holes that were left behind. So I decided to stitch up some of the holes while the hide was still wet. I pre-drilled, you could say, or pre-nailed holes for me to stitch. I used a whip stitch, so you can see me doing that here. So pre-drilling the holes with the nail so that I could put the needle through. I used fishing line to stitch up the hole, and then periodically I would look at the fur side of the hide to make sure I wasn't pulling the hair in to the hole. This took quite some time because there were several holes I needed to stitch up, but it ended up being pretty successful. Also, some of the hair had thinned from near the holes due to not working the hide right away, so it's really important that you do that. This is my third hide, so I'm still learning, but I thought I would post this video since it was requested from someone, and hopefully it can be helpful to you and your projects, and maybe I'll create a new one next year. Also, something I had learned from online sources is to actually recut the shape of the holes to be more like a football shape so that it stitches up more cleanly. I did not do this, and I just left them as they were and stitched them up, and I think that worked just fine for my purposes, but you might consider doing that if you would like a cleaner closure. As it was drying, I sanded down the hide with fine grit sandpaper to make it smoother. I also re-stretched and re-tacked down the hide several times before moving on to the next step. After about 1 to 2 days of being tacked to this board, the hide should be partially dry, and then you will be able to move on to the next step. The next day, I rubbed it down in neat's foot oil again and then continued stretching, retacking, and sanding it until it was dry. At this point, it's finished, or you can leave it to hang until you're ready for it. Use the neat's foot oil as necessary to rehydrate. And this is my finished product. Everyone always says that the third one will be your best, and this was definitely not the case for me. But that's okay. Remember not to put too much pressure on yourself to make it perfect. This is a learning experience and an opportunity to make something special out of a beautiful animal that you will likely use for a long time. Here are some other tanning projects that I have completed. And also, please note that this is a pickling process rather than a true tan, meaning that these rugs are not waterproof. If you'd like to do a true tan, like this fox, you'll need a tanning solution and a few extra steps. Thanks so much for watching my video, and a huge thank you to the producers of the sources I used to learn about the process of tanning animal hides.